What if gifting orgonite could also be a part of your legacy, especially if you're EMF sensitive? Good morning. My name is Angelina Carleton. I'm the hostess to the Design Your Legacy podcast. And this lovely morning, I have the privilege to introduce you to Sharon Daphna as well as Gabriel Lazar. Sharon is a researcher, author, orgonomist, planetary healer, and craftswoman from Los Angeles, California, USA. Since 2014, Sharon and her husband, Gabriel Lazar, have been working with free energy devices called orgonite to increase rainfall, mitigate drought and pollution, and restore balance to the weather and the atmosphere. They also have a podcast called The Human Frequency, which covers the study and research of science, law, health, and weather. Today, we're going to have a metaphysical conversation that's going to cover much ground, especially on the topic of perhaps restoring your health as well as the environment. Welcome, Gabriel and Sharon.
Thank you so
for
much.
having us.
Yes, so you're fellow Angelinos out of the United States, and there's a global audience, but I'm so thrilled to have you speak into this concept because, again, many people might have heard about it, but again, it's not necessarily mainstream, and I like to bring on positive role models that have knowledge in different areas, and I think that the two of you are definitely pioneers in this area, so I thought maybe I could start with a problem, and the problem being, what if there's something energetic that's not just blocking human creativity with this idea of one taking personal agency of their legacy, but also perhaps like in this idea of the influence of the invisible. So maybe we could start here.
Well, everything in this world is energetic underneath it all. So what we see in the physical world is just what we see with our eyes, because this is the dimension we live in, but there's so much underlying everything. And so we've learned that there are energies that affect our health, there are energies that affect the environment, and all weather is actually energetic. So we could talk more about that, but the science of meteorology is a limited and antiquated science that I think needs to be buried. Orgonomy is the true science of weather. So when we understand the energetic dynamics of the atmosphere, then we can combat problems like climate change, global warming, all these things that people are worried about. We find that these are actually not even real problems, but they're temporary situations that can be completely alleviated energetically.
Yeah, and before you add to that, Gabriel, it's so fascinating. Yes, the human spectrum of what we can see with our eyes is something like 1%. So of course we can't see radiation. We can't necessarily see UV, even if bumblebees can. I think even my dog can sense things and energies that I can't. And I know you're dealing with allergies over there. So just to let the viewer know that it's not that Sharon's emotional. But yeah, there was a movie that I brought up over email, and it's a cartoon movie called Monsters, Inc. And for any of the young adults out there or parents that might have seen this cartoon movie, have the two of you seen the movie?
No, I haven't, but it came out around the early 2000s, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
I think so. And in there, it's like they would have these monsters that would scare children, then they would bottle up the fear energy. And I thought that, this idea of the amount of human suffering that goes on this planet is one of the areas that we could talk about, even if it's just briefly, because one of the number one things that stops a person from designing their holistic legacy is limiting beliefs. And the limiting beliefs comes from this idea of just consistent survival. So instead of being able to thrive, we're just surviving, we're paying bills, or even the fact that our human suffering could be a form of energetic food, whether somebody calls it loosh energy or whatever the label is for it. And I thought maybe, we could talk about this idea of, well, what if fear is manufactured? I mean, if they're showing it right to our faces in the cartoons.
It is. And that kind of gets right to the heart of what our work is based on. We are sort of continuing the work that a very little known scientist and psychologist named Wilhelm Reich did back in the 1930s through 1950s. And he discovered these two sort of competing energies, if you will, and he called them OR, which is the shorthand for orgone energy, and that's the life force energy, and it's known by many different names: chi, prana. There's many different cultures around the world that have called it different things, but they're just different names for the same thing. And the opposing energy he called DOR, which is something of a misnomer because that stands for deadly orgone radiation. Even though orgone isn't really deadly, it's sort of like immobilized life force, like a stagnant. And you can kind of see the pattern as you look into these terms that it's that is the fear energy. and he discovered this, and at the very end of his life he discovered the source of it. And it's pretty crazy because it is off world. I'm just going to go ahead and get that out the right away. And he was right around this time, 1955, 56, he was immediately thrown in jail and his books were all burned, almost all of them. And he died while he was in jail at age 60. But a lot of his books survived the burning and were translated in the 70s. And we're thankful that we have all of his wonderful work for us today.
A lot of the reason that they put him in jail and banned his books, the main reason was that he was doing groundbreaking cancer research with orgone energy. So he was actually seeing that this could cure cancer. And this is the kind of stuff that the FDA doesn't like. I mean, they banned his orgone accumulator, which is what he was using to cure his cancer patients or to treat them, and seeing great results with it. But they banned its sale across state lines. They did everything they could to suppress him. And one of his assistants did it anyway. And this is what led to his arrest. You know, technically that's what he was put into jail for. But this research he did is just so groundbreaking because it's the solution to our health issues. I mean, it's the cure for cancer. He showed how stagnant energy in the body was the cause of diseases. And it also is the cure for drought and air pollution.
Yeah,
Everything completely comprehensive.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely fascinating. And as a coach, one of the things that I know is that if somebody walks into a room and everyone's laughing, you want to laugh because the energy is contagious, just as if you walk into a room and everyone's angry, all of a sudden you're mad and you don't even know why. So this idea that energy is real. And so something as simple as we could walk out our door and we can see, oh my gosh, look at all the smog in the sky, or wow, it's so hazy. And you know, and then you can feel like there are days where you feel light and there's other days where you're like, oh my gosh, you know, it's almost like the energy is outside of your body and you have to almost like Sisyphus. It's like pushing a ball up a hill just to feel cheerful that day. So I know some of the work you've done in terms of gifting orgonite, and I don't know if you have one of the objects near you, but
oh, you know, I should grab one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I'll go get one. They're right here. I just have to go behind here and get them.
Our stockpile.
I know that on your website you've got images to show like what a sky could look like before gifting orgonite, and then what a sky could look like in terms of the you know, opening it up afterwards. And even, you know, one of my cousins across the pond, he also knows about orgonite. So it's a global conversation, even if it's kind of under the radar. And even if Wilhelm Reich was over target, you know, you've now got the next generation coming forward that are picking up the breadcrumbs that he left and wanting to carry on this knowledge. So it's not just forgotten about, like one of the books, you know, underneath.
Yeah, that's what we weren't even, that wasn't our intention in 2014. We just happened to stumble upon this technology, but we do feel like we are sort of picking up where he left off and taking it into new areas. And again, it's all about that OR versus DOR battle that's been going on for centuries and centuries, even well before, you know, cell phones and cell towers and all of this technology existed. It's been going on for a very, very long time.
Yeah. This is the most simple orgonite that I brought over. These are the ones we put in the environment. I have lots of fancy ones too. I should have put one here on the desk. I can go grab one in a little bit, but anybody can come to our website, thekembo.com, and see the beautiful art orgonite that I make for the home. These are the most simple form of orgonite right here. And these are put into the environment. You can put them all over your house and yard. And it doesn't look like much, but it does a lot. It contains aluminum shavings, a copper coil and quartz crystals, and other ingredients. We include shungite in these because that's a very good element against dark energy. And people like to use shungite for EMF protection as well. But when you put it in the orgonite, it's much more effective because of how the device works. Would you like me to elaborate on it a little bit? When the crystals and metals, these are very fine metal shavings, are put into a catalyzing resin, that resin squeezes on them and that activates their energetic properties, their piezoelectric properties. So all of these things, these crystals and metals, they're like little antennas and they're always putting out this energy. But when you put them all together like this, these tiny particles of it, and squeeze on it with that polyester resin, it puts out an even more increased energy field of orgone energy. And you would have to see it to believe it. I mean, if you put one of these out on a hazy day and watch the haze break, watch clouds form out of it, and watch that blue sky return, you'll see it in action. The best way to see the most result is to put it near a cell phone tower, because the cell phone tower is putting out DOR, which is the opposing energy of OR. And when you put this near it, it neutralizes it. And like I said, you have to see it to believe it. I have 9 years of documentation on my blog somewhere under the Kembo, and you can access that blog through our website.
And a book.
And I've written a book. It's Invisible Soldiers, Silent War, and it documents our gifting from 2014 through 2019. And of course, we have even more since then. So I keep that up to date on the blog. But I have photos of everything we've done, as well as weather changes, and I've recorded everything. And that's what makes us different as orgonite gifters, is we record it. We treat it like a scientific endeavor, not just going out there. And it's fun. It can be fun. It also can be scary. There's all these different emotions people feel when they gift. For us, it's a scientific endeavor. And we have proven, and you can check the photographic evidence and the weather changes to see, we have proven what this does. It increases rainfall, and it removes air pollution. And it does all that by neutralizing the energy that causes air pollution to linger and prevents rainfall. So it's all energy against energy. And when you do this, you are negatively ionizing the sky, which is
a good thing.
Which is a good thing. Negative ions are what people like to have in their houses, like with a Himalayan salt lamp, or some people have negative ionizing machines. We want that.
Yeah,
it makes us feel relaxed.
Negative ionization is also what the sky needs in order for clouds to form and rain to fall. And of course, the cell towers and all of the EMF emitting devices, the Wi-Fi routers, et cetera, they are all putting out positive ionization. So it's no wonder that we see storm systems sometimes just completely circumvent cities.
Right.
They'll just go around them because those are the highest concentration of those emitters. Right. So what we do with this work, and we've gifted about 8,000 of these tower busters in the last 9 years total. Just incredible effects when you get right to that source and put them by the cell phone towers. It just completely changes everything. It's like an energetic release, and sometimes it can be very sudden. It can be very strong.
Right, and this is why we tackle cities, because that's the biggest concentration.
Yeah. And so I just wanted to emphasize again that I think that there's a part of legacy planning that is legal and financial. And I think there's also a part that is spiritual and metaphysical and energetic. And I don't know if the two of you have ever heard the statistic, but I think it's something like, no matter how good and airtight the legal documents are and the financial documents, the reason that a lot of times legacies are not passed on has to do with, I think it's 80% trust and communication. So if the energy can be better in the home, and the energy can be better when somebody steps out of their home, I think that it's wise to open one's mind and consider that holistic legacy planning has to consider many different facets, because it's not just, you sign the will and then the family tree is going to be amazing forever. Why do you think it's effective? Is it because it's like little antennas that then send out a signal, whether it's a few meters up above?
Well, it's effective because it's interdimensional. So it goes in every direction. So I have this little piece here. It's going up, down, all around, through the walls, outside, into the ground. It goes everywhere. So it's so effective because it's literally the most powerful energy in creation, because it is the energy of creation. It is the life force energy. It is what gives us life in our bodies. Everything that's living is living because it is containing orgone energy. And it is the force that governs all of the weather and just the Earth's dynamics, the universe's dynamics. It comes from space, it comes from Earth, it comes from everywhere. And the DOR that Gabe mentioned, the proliferation on Earth is from off of this world, but DOR is natural too. I mean, these two energies both exist together naturally in the universe.
But it's the imbalance.
There's an imbalance.
It's when the DOR gets the upper hand over the OR that stuff goes awry, especially with the weather. Yeah.
So let me bring up another spicy topic. So the Tower of Babel, they say in the storybooks, I wasn't there, okay, that there was that there, I don't know if it was the fallen angels who it was, but there was an interest to build a ladder to the sky. Maybe it was during the time of Babylon. And I kind of wondered, could there be different levels of humanoids? Do you think the God of this world is a negative energy such as AI? And, kind of what are your thoughts there regarding, this power structure? Because I know this is like, all of us kind of wonder, like, well, what's really going on? Because it's more than just bills. It's more than just bills and,
This is a very, very good question. I let Gabe start.
Well, I first just want to bring up the distinction between the God with an uppercase G and the gods of this world, lowercase g, because there is a difference. The Tower of Babel was built by men because they wanted to connect to their creator, but they also wanted to make a name for themselves. That's why if you read that part, and I think it was Genesis 11, it says, let us make a name for ourselves so we may not be scattered about the face of the earth. And then God says the people is one, and now this they begin to do, and now nothing will be restrained from them which they imagine to do. See, what's going on there is they're actually turning their back on their creator and forming their own little club with their own rules. We will make the laws, we will govern ourselves. That's and that's a snare. That's a tremendous snare.
Yeah, it's prohibited.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the world is, so the gods of this world are idols. That's another part of the Bible. So what we're looking at is the reason that it seems like this world is run by some force that's evil, right? It just seems like whatever's in charge of this world is evil. It's because it is. It's because as a whole planet for eons, the inhabitants of this planet have turned their back on God. And when I say God, I don't want people to think that this is like a religious thing, but there is a governing force of the universe, and there's no way around it. It controls everything. We have no control over when we're born and when we die, for example, or anything like that. We have a little bit of control within our lives. Obviously, you're helping people to plan their legacies and have some kind of impact. It's not that we can't do anything positive or shape our lives in some way, but this world is governed by an evil force. So it's not God that's that evil force. It's the gods that the people created as one. The people created all these governments. And as you can see, these governments aren't particularly helpful. They're not really doing what the people want. Things are not going well. So you could see that when we all put our heads together and say, let's all make the rules together, it ends up backfiring on us. So
yes.
A lot of the evil that we're seeing is just because of this turning away from what is natural and creating these unnatural rules that are not beneficial to us at all. And the real God, the God, is the creative force. It's what gives us life, and that's what the orgone energy is. It's divine. It's divine energy.
It's not some bearded guy in the sky who's vengeful one minute and loving the next. It doesn't work that way. It's a force. God is a spirit. It's not. You see, and this is. I'll get to this later when you ask about our legacy, but I really getting people off this idea that God and religion have anything to do with each other is something I would really like this to not be believed so ardently going forward, because this really is a stumbling block for a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, you don't have to be religious to have a relationship with God. In fact, I think that religion can hinder it because the religions create their own rules. So the relationship with God is completely natural, and it's outside of any organized group.
Yeah, I just bring that up because if Wilhelm Wright was onto something and then, he's over target, and it just makes me wonder, would somebody not want orgonite energy to be here? And so
absolutely,
right?
They do not want it to be here because so my book goes into this in great depth. It's a huge, huge, deep topic, but on a very simple level, they don't want us having the ability to cure disease and have a clean and healthy environment, abundant rainfall. Everything that we need can be brought to us through balancing the energy of the earth.
It goes back to what I was talking about food, the human suffering that is needed and has to be continuously generated by artificial means. See, this planet, and this is what Wilhelm Reich discovered at the very end of his life, this planet has a parasitic infection and has for thousands and thousands of years.
Which I've heard. It's almost, it's like it's been quarantined.
Well, it's been quarantined in the sense that we're so inundated with it on this planet that it's hard to really think outside of what's going on, just the day-to-day survival, like you were talking about, just paying bills and just like trying to keep our bodies alive, which is getting harder and harder each day, or so it would seem. But what's going on here with this parasitic infection is that the host is always unaware of what the parasite is doing to it. The parasite is causing the host to do things that benefit the parasite at the expense of the host. As soon as the host figures out what's going on, the parasite's days are numbered. So a great deal has been done over the centuries to just sort of keep this infection hidden. But if you look at the news now, it's like they're not even trying anymore to keep it covert. It's getting more and more absurd with each passing day.
Yeah. So I'm going to bring up AI again. So do you think that maybe, and I'm going to go woo woo here, but I think even Elon Musk has said like maybe we live in a simulation. Do you think that what is here is like a program within a program? Because literally when you hold up that orgonite device, if you want to hold it up again, Sharon,
Yeah,
it's like it's almost like it's like mechanical. It reminds me of like a little computer. But
it
even when
is.
I've flown over, whether it's both domestic or international flights, there are times where I look down and I'm like, it almost looks like the earth is gridded sometimes, whether it's the cities or just it could be out in the middle of farmland. And it's almost like a computer chip. And I'm just like thinking, are we in a program within a program? I even think there may have been a movie with Leonardo DiCaprio. I can't think of the name of it right now, but yeah. So I wondered your thoughts if we're like in a sub program within a sub program.
Well, there is some element of holographic reality to what we're seeing, but our lives are very real. I mean, this world and what we see, it is real. And it's just the holographic nature of it, or what might seem holographic, is that everybody's mind is perceiving it differently based on how their mind works and how it takes in information, and that the minds are very, very easily molded to see things that maybe aren't really the way they are. So we're able to, I mean, the AI is able to sort of master the human mind through energy and through media and propaganda. So the main way they do this is through the smartphone. That's the main way that people take in information these days. So this device itself is a deorizing technology. So it is emitting the opposite of orgone constantly. And that's why it gives people headaches. People have all kinds of health issues related to using smartphones. Some people might not even realize that's causing their issues. So they're being bombarded with this deadly energy. It's it's very damaging to the health and to the mind. And at the same time, they're looking at very negative things in the news. I mean, it's just one negative thing after another. Much of it's not even true or exaggerated to be more negative.
Or contradicts another negative thing right below it.
So there's a lot of negative media and deadly energy that's happening at the same time. And then, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Yeah. So this is why I'm bringing it up, because this idea of somebody taking personal agency and designing their legacy, what is it that they're up against? And if their awareness can be increased, that literally they're being bombarded, not just with negativity that lowers their vibration, but also this idea that there could be a spirit of confusion and they don't know whether they're coming or going. So if they don't know whether they're coming or going, what are the chances are that they're going to set aside one day a week to think about like their long range plans or to create a legacy for generations down the road? So please continue.
Well, yeah, they're going to have a clear mind in order to create that legacy that they want. So they have to be able to think clearly and not let negative outside influences cloud their judgment. And
to recognize it when that happens. And the phone is designed to impair that ability.
Right. It takes your consciousness. If your consciousness is up here, it takes it down to here and you can't get above this point, So it is energetically like a frequency fence against your consciousness, which is also energetic. It's electrical. Every impulse in our body is an electrical impulse. So it is literally like physically suppressing it. And also, since people who are using them are generally taking in negative stuff. And also, don't forget the negative influence of other people in their lives, family and friends who are also being negatively influenced. It creates a feedback loop, because then they're going to latch on to something negative they saw in the news, and then they're going to talk about it and they're going to get freaked out, and then this person's going to get freaked out, and it's just going to build and build.
See the pattern?
And so it's just
food.
It's food for an etheric parasite, is what Gabe is saying, that the ones that control this world, they need us to be in that lower state or they cannot maintain control. As soon as somebody starts thinking clearly, they're able to use that creative energy, like you're helping your clients do, to create something better. But as long as they're kept down in this low state of consciousness, they're going to have all these blocks, not just to thinking clearly, but to even having the energy to do it, just to be able to, live beyond survival. So yeah, it's not really that we live in a holographic reality, although there are holographic elements to what we see. I think there's things going on, like particularly in the sky, that could only be explained holographically. But for us and everyone else, this is very real. And it's, time for everyone to take control of their minds and make sure that what they're seeing around them is real and that they're not being colored by some misperceptions.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add to that. I think technology is wonderful. It allows us to be here today, but I think that balance and understanding the pros and the cons, and also,
Yeah.
you referred to something about some people can easily have a smartphone addiction, but I also know that and obviously we're Americans, and sometimes Americans can be a little ethnocentric and thinking, the U.S. is the center of but I know that there have been different news reports that Americans, whether it's in the South or the central part of America, have decided to invest in flip phones, and they've gotten rid of their smartphones because they're wising up to the fact that it could be a track and trace device. So even though cell phones are amazing and they allow for conveniences, they allow for social media and all of those great ways to connect with other people instantaneously, I think there's also another niche, and this is one of the reasons why I brought this up. So today's affluent are seeking, alternative remedies to the wellness as well as pre-designed experiences. And I don't know if that's just because they want to live longer or they've come across a family member who has ailments. I mean, it's it's a new world today than when I remember growing up in the 80s. And one of the things I also mentioned to you was a Netflix documentary when you brought up EMF sensitivity. I mean, the number of new health ailments today, it's either people are going to take their health into their own hands, or it's like, what are they just going to have more of the same another day? And I think that's why people are searching and seeking out different answers, and they're starting to open their mind, because if what's not working, it's then they're going to say, either I'm going to survive and live and design a legacy, or, they're just going to throw in the towel.
Yeah. The EMF sensitivity is actually very, very prevalent, and many, many people are feeling ailments that they don't know why they're feeling. I do also have to add to that there is a major problem with the food supply too. I mean, there are a lot of things that people are taking in, and chemicals in people's homes.
Food and water.
There are many,
both.
many things that are causing people to feel unwell. What we tackle with our work is the EMF. So we give people an opportunity to neutralize EMF in their houses. We also have tons of educational materials on how to get rid of it completely. So you can come to our website and you can buy orgonite from us. You could also learn to make orgonite using our tutorials. And we have more resources than I can even count right now. You just go through the articles and check on the blog, but the articles on my site under the article section give really, really helpful constructive advice on how to, first off, what this is. What is this connection we have with artificial intelligence that's causing us to allow it to damage us? And also, how can we use our computers and do like what we're doing today? Because I love my computer. I love being connected and I love technology, but how can we use it without letting it hurt us, and don't let it use us either? So this is the kind of stuff that if you want to go to the Kembo.com and read up on hardwire your home, that'll tell you what to do. And anybody who is affluent especially has the resources at their disposal to even hire someone if it's difficult to hardwire their home. And if you're not affluent, you could do it yourself, and it's really not hard. I explain exactly how.
Step by step. And it's really not that difficult. Again, it takes that understanding of how do things work. It's like we have to relearn how things work. We've been just dependents as a people for so long on just having everything done for us, and just, paying money to have this done for us. We don't really understand how things work anymore. And that's kind of what we have to relearn. We have a completely EMF free home. Everything. We have no Wi-Fi. It's all hardwired. You plug in with an Ethernet cable. There's no smart meter. We have a cell phone that's off 99.9% of the time. We turn it on when we need to call someone when we're away from the house, and then it gets turned back off again 2 minutes later. So yeah, it just takes. We have to be responsible for our technology, and like she was just saying, we have to use it, not the other way around.
I do want to add to the smartphone and cell phone thing. You had mentioned the flip phones. We explain on our site how to use just a landline, hardwired, corded landline. And that's the true solution, actually. I know people think going back to flip phones may be the solution, but in fact, the flip phone is also a track and trace device, and it releases EMF. So even the flip phone is not as powerful as an iPhone, but if you're going to have a cell phone, there's no reason not to have the most up-to-date one. So when you're out there, it works. And if you have to go online, you can. I don't tell people that you have to never use one ever. I mean, we use one, I would say about 5 minutes a month. It's not very much, but when we're out in the world, occasionally we need to hop on the internet. I'll hop on a Wi-Fi if I have to do that because we don't have service on the phone, but the phone could be used for calls. And by the way, it's $3 a month for our phone. Okay, that's to put in perspective how little we use it. But I don't think that the flip phone is necessarily the solution, because in George Ritschl's book, I'll reference him again, he had 3 car accidents while gifting. So he wrote a book that's all about gifting in Africa. And he did this before we did. He learned about this 20 years ago. And the book is called Operation Paradise. And he had 3 car accidents. And in each case, he cited that he had literally blacked out and didn't know what was going on during that time. And if you were carrying a cell phone with you when gifting and you have GPS, which he had both going, you are trackable. And there is an etheric element to this. There is some kind of off-world element that they know when you're doing it. I mean, it's not like the police can necessarily find you, but there is a force that knows that the energy is changing. And if there's a DOR source with you, a cell phone and GPS are the main ones, they can tell where you are and they can directly attack you through it. Plus, everyone's phone is in their name. They know who has it. So if you're doing something that is not what they want you to do, they can energetically attack you through your phone. So this is why we recommend not using them. And it's not as hard as people think.
Yeah. Well, I think it's wonderful. And in some ways you can have like an old-fashioned phone, and right?
We do.
Well, that's the funny thing. We have an EMF-free home, but we have the same technological capacity that everyone else has. So it's about taking responsibility.
Yeah, you can use it without letting it use you. Many people let their cell phones control their lives, and if you give it too much control, it can also create great inconveniences for you. Like, for example, we are followers of Peter Schiff. We love watching Peter Schiff for financial news. He had his Twitter account hacked this last week. He can't even get in now. At least he got the hacker out. They were informed, because there was a hacker that had put all the scam stuff on his Twitter account.
He changed all the passwords, all that stuff.
He literally can't get his account back, though, because he was using a cell phone number to log in. And I think that's how he was doing it, because he does not know what email address is associated with the account. So he can't get in again. So this is a real problem, because he didn't take enough control. He needs to have full control of, and of course it's Twitter, so you can't have full control because it's run by another company, but he needs to have as much control as he can. So not knowing the email address associated with it is a real problem. So everybody should know, with all the technology you use, your emails, like your Gmail account, for example, if you're just logging in with a cell phone number, that is not nearly as safe as knowing the email and password. I recommend everybody take full control. Always use your email and password. Don't let the cell phone do too much for you. Don't connect too many things. Do it manually yourself. It only takes an extra few seconds and you have more control.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant, because one of the things with designing a legacy is bringing back some of those life skills and human skills, and not just giving too much over to AI, artificial intelligence. I think it is remarkably convenient. And having said that, it's another form of intelligence. So we still need to keep our brains and be able to distill our best life and business lessons and so forth. So let me bring up a question when it comes to the high vibration that orgonite can bring about. And I think my question has to do with, how does orgonite help our connection to the source, to the creator, to feel connected and to feel that sense of calmness?
Well, orgone energy is, excuse me, when you talk.
Orgone energy is the energy of our creator. So, everything is connected. I think that people are starting to understand that we're all connected by this invisible web of energy. So when you have the orgonite in your life, and I think, putting some orgonite in your house is a great first step. I mean, we did that before we even got rid of our cell phones and our Wi-Fi. It makes such a difference in, first of all, you're relaxed. It just calms you down. Your mind is clear. You can think. And you start to see more of what's important. You could start to feel more about not just your day-to-day survival, but you start to think a little deeper. And since it literally is the energy of creation, it puts you in a direct line with your creator. And this is why we can actually change the weather using it. This is the part that's mind-blowing to people. And the mainstream will not pick up on this. They are very, very confused about the weather improvements we've seen. Of course, they say everything is bad. But what we've seen is an increase of rainfall all over the whole world. I mean, dramatic increase. In California in particular, they can't even put us on the drought map anymore. I mean, it's really, really helped the environment.
Not that they could for years. They were just pretending for a very long time. There hasn't been an actual drought since 2014.
But we're actually using this unbelievable energy. It's not that it comes from us, but we're taking it and putting it out again in a positive way to improve the world. So it's a lot of power. It's a lot of power in people's hands. And we don't get the power from ourselves. We get it from something higher than us.
Yeah, I was just going to bring up that with the news. It's, they say if it bleeds, it leads. So I think that's why anyone wants to. But having said that, I think these days people have migrated away from mainstream media, whether that's CNN or whatever those channels are. And they're, I have friends that, 5 years ago, they would not have watched BitChute or one of those other channels. And today it's like, that's where they go. And they're so curious. They're like, what else is out there?
But you still have to have discernment. And that's the thing. And we would know because we were very briefly pretty entrenched in the independent media back around 2015, 2016. There is a lot of fear in that world just as much as the mainstream, and the opposition to actual practical solutions is also just as entrenched in the alt media. So we do have to be discerning when it comes to taking in the alternative sources, because oftentimes they could be just as bad as the mainstream, but repackaged slightly differently.
Yeah, it's just another arm of the same fear mechanism, and
she's got a whole chapter in her book about it.
I do. I have a chapter all about the independent media because I worked for the independent media. I was on Talk Network, which was a radio network done by Natural News, which I'm sure a lot of people know about. I actually co-hosted a show with Jim Mars, which was like an incredible honor for me. So I did work in the independent media, and I used to get interviewed and had been interviewed on some pretty high profile shows like Buzzsaw with Sean Stone. So as there was things that, and George Noory, I did an interview with George Noory back in 2015 on Gaia. At the time it was called Gaiam. So I've had a lot of interaction with the alt media. And, it's pretty interesting when you're on the high profile shows. They are almost just as slick as the mainstream. They've got, beautiful sets, makeup artists, and it's pretty cool, when you're there. But when you look at the programs that they're putting out, there's a tremendous amount of fear, even in those. And I was really happy to be able to get this information about orgonite out in 2015 and 2016 on these shows. But once I did it, as soon as I was on Gaiam, that network got bought out and it became Gaia. And they never featured anything on the topic again. See, I had been on there and Ken Rolla had been on there in the past. They won't touch that topic anymore. So obviously it's a no-no topic. After I had an interview with Sean Stone, that was the last interview he ever did on Buzzsaw. That's when that show ended. And I think it was going to end anyway, but it was kind of strange because they took down his entire YouTube channel right after my show went up. First off, they didn't let it air on their network. But then Sean put it up on his YouTube. And then the whole YouTube got taken down, the whole thing. He was able to get his channel back up again, but you could see that there is definitely an opposition. And it's not that the hosts or the people who want to talk about these topics are the problem, but there's something that, in control of the networks. Obviously, Sean wanted this topic on his show.
Right.
But there's something at the top, doesn't want this information getting out. So even the alt media is very suppressed on certain topics.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I shared with you is that I like the fact that you stay positive and you keep it positive and you bring the remedies, and it's not just that fear mongering energy, so that when somebody's done, checking out a podcast or one of your videos, it's like they can leave and they go, okay, there's hope, or okay, there's a remedy and it's practical. And even like the context for today's episode is, it's this idea of gifting orgonite could also be somebody else's legacy. It's within the positive. So again, it's not that fear that sucks somebody dry, and pulls them down.
Well,
So
yeah, the whole reason we even got into orgonite was because she typed in a search engine one day how to stop chemtrails. That started this whole thing. So it was born out of a desire to find a solution. We were sick of the problem. We didn't exactly know the nature of the problem. We learned that whole narrative is BS too.
Yeah.
But
I was just tired of seeing all that pollution up there.
Yeah.
It was bothering me.
But it led to the solution. And we were skeptical at first. I really need to make this point here. A lot of people are skeptical about orgonite. That's totally normal. We were that way too. Once we started working with it, we were just like, what the hell, let's try it. But once we did and we saw what it did, it couldn't be ignored anymore. We knew it was for real. And that was kind of at the point when we started to see, yeah, the alternative media is not interested in solving the problem. So we have to just go around them and do it ourselves.
Our skepticism was because anything we could find on orgonite sounded ridiculous because it was unscientific. It sounded like woo-woo, kind of new age stuff. It didn't make any sense to me. But it was when I listened to Ken Rolla explain how it actually worked, scientifically, like what I was explaining earlier, just briefly about how the Tower Buster works. When he explained that, I said, oh, there's a science to this. And we had actually seen through taking photos every day at that time in 2013, I was taking photos of the sky every day in Los Angeles throughout the day because I was very concerned about what I was seeing up there. And I started to see photos that matched results that people would show with orgone devices. And then I realized there was something else going on here. And between that and a scientific explanation of orgonite, I was able to say, okay, you know what have we got to lose? It's just the cost of a few materials. We'll make them, we'll see what happens. And it was unbelievable. I mean, the change happened immediately. The sky cleared immediately when we made the first ones and just around our house. And then we thought, well, we better make more of these and we better start putting them around. And so it grew from there. And by now we have proven amazing things with it. And I've made remarkable weather discoveries that mainstream meteorology doesn't even know about. In fact, we just uncovered one on our podcast the other day on the Human Frequency about the cause of June gloom. We have actually, through doing this work, discovered the cause of June gloom. And in LA, every June it's cloudy. Nobody knows why. Nobody thinks why. And this May was just as cloudy as June. In fact, it was San Diego was the cloudiest place in the lower 48 states in the month of May. Can you believe in California, we had the record cloudiest place?
Wow.
And LAX was number 2. So if you were wondering, why is it so gray all the time, even in May, the news was stepping all over themselves to come up with a reason for this, because this is kind of like it's increased. It's new, all this June gloom. It's because the monsoon season has extended through this work and has a wider reach now. So we have a monsoon that's not just covering the Southwest anymore in the Four Corners. It's now extending all the way to Los Angeles. And in fact, that's why we're getting rain even in June in California now. And the cause of the June gloom this is the weird part that's hard to understand. It is the transmutation of the energy of the monsoon suppression. So it's like two things happening at once. First, they're hitting the monsoon just to suppress it. So it's shorter range and shorter period of time. But then we're hitting back with orgone energy, mostly from having gifted Phoenix, Arizona, and Salt Lake City. These are the places that really impacted it. We're hitting back, but there's still DOR. And so what's ending up happening is we're getting this other phenomenon, and it's like it's a marine layer. So it's the transmutation of the monsoon suppression energy resulting in yet a different kind of cloud. And fog is a transmutation. Anytime you see fog, that is orgone energy acting on the atmosphere and removing deadly energy and causing the water vapor around you to collect.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. And speaking of negative ions, I know a lot of times we get the good feelings when we're at the beach or at the mountains because of the negative ions. So I know it's incredibly important. I also know that there are medical devices today that have a wand that can point negative ions towards the human skin to enhance the T cells, whether it's the top, 2 inches or 6 inches, and it heals ailments. And so I wondered if the two of you might opine about the negative ions of orgonite creating a shield of protection.
Well, it creates a field of protection rather than a shield. What it does is, and yeah, the negative ions directly benefit your body and your mind. But rather than a shield, orgonite actually creates like a counter field. So you've got one energy and then another energy, and it neutralizes it. It like the DOR is neutralized by the orgone. It smooths out that chaotic waveform.
Well, this is what Wilhelm Reich was doing with his orgone accumulator, which was a big box that you would sit in, and it would have layers of organic and inorganic material. He was basically condensing OR into this one space, and a cancer patient would sit in it and experience immediate relief from symptoms ranging from that to eventually just being completely cured. So that's what he was doing, was that he was using it subcutaneously to just heal these ailments, and that, as you mentioned at the very beginning of the show, that was definitely not something that the FDA wanted getting out. So
I think that's what Dr. Crusher's wand is on Star Trek, The Next Generation.
They
They're
tell us
using
things.
orgone.
Yeah.
They're using it's because it's like 400 years in the future. They know this stuff. Well, they pretend not to. But sometimes on Star Trek, they're very like confused by people's abilities and psychic realms and things that in the future, of course, will know that everything is connected energetically. But yet they are using what I think is orgone energy to cure people, because she waves it over an injury and the injury is gone.
Yeah. So the two of you have been on quite a journey since starting it. Was it in 2014?
Yes.
Yep. April.
Yeah. So I think this is the moment where I'd like to ask you, what does the word legacy mean to you? Because you're doing something that I don't think you plan to do,
It's a legacy that found us.
Yep.
I didn't know I would leave a legacy for the world. I actually always thought that I should. I didn't want to leave and just be, just have lived my life and come and gone and not done something, but this is something that found us. I could have never come up with this on my own. So I'm grateful for that.
Well, I would have to say it's interesting you use the term holistic legacy as like this all-encompassing thing. I view it as like kind of like a major legacy and a minor legacy, like two things sorry, two things kind of happening at once. And I would say minor legacy, like in the short term, I would really hope that I can have these there's so many, but there are many erroneous ideas and beliefs that just people need to move past in order
Do
to
you mean like
progress.
the bias, like, oh, the legacy is only for the affluent or multi-generational family of wealth?
Not even specific to that. I'm just talking about the things that we've learned over the years, that so much has been done to prevent people from finding the solution to their problems, and so much has also been done that if they happen to stumble across it, that they'll reject it. And the way they reject it is from our indoctrination and our training, and that is kind of in the minor legacy realm of what I would really like to. I'm hoping that our information allows people to recognize that all of that stuff is just nonsense and doesn't serve us, and that it's not true. And just to give a small example of something I said at the beginning of the show, the difference between God and religion has nothing to do with God. We're very big on words, as you know, we talk about this on our podcast, but just we analyze words, and then we can just sort of figure out. So there are a lot of words that we just use without even thinking of what they actually mean. But the word religion, I'll try and keep it short. The word religion comes from the Latin legio, which means to bind. And the prefix re, as we know, means again or anew. So to bind again. Well, that could be anything. I mean, it doesn't have to do with God. It could be where we used to live. The homeowners association was people's religion. it's just,
Well, sure. And
it's
from
about.
the, I'm sorry to interrupt. And even from the perspective of magic, you can bind something and people don't even understand. Like when somebody would wrap string around a piece of paper during the Middle Ages when they would deliver that by horse, there was even something symbolic of wrapping the string around that letter.
Yeah, a bond, a legio, ligament. It's in a lot of other words too. So we have to be very careful about what we're making that bond to. And what we have discovered is that the two terms have nothing to do with each other. Religion, I often say religions are all different paths away from God, because when you get right down to it, they really are.
Yeah.
You know how many times the word religion appears in the Bible, the entire Bible?
I don't know.
Two
Oh,
times.
I know love is the word that I think appears the most.
Keep my commandments is the phrase that appears the most.
Okay.
It's 172 times, meaning
Okay.
obey the law. It's a book of law. It's a book that shows us what the Constitution is, the reality, and what we have to obey. And by not obeying, that's what causes so many problems. And we're just at the beginning of starting to understand how this whole thing works. But leaving that legacy in the short term of allowing people to just sort of deprogram from these erroneous beliefs and reprogram with something that they know is true because it speaks to them. This is where the spirit lives, the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit is orgone
It is
energy, life
orgone
force.
energy.
It's all different terms for the same thing. We often get caught up in the words and we just lose the meaning.
I just wanted to add that as part of my legacy too, I do want to reconcile God and science. I just don't think that there needs to be this divide, because orgonomy is the science of God. So when science can recognize a greater force behind everything, and this is the law that Gabe is talking about, it's not the laws of man, it's the laws of the universe. I would love to see, in addition to that separation of religion from God, because it's different things, a reconciliation between science and God, because that actually is one. But God and science are actually one.
Major legacy. I think you might have an idea. I want to do so much damage to the parasites and their control structure that they're crippled. And I feel like we've already done that.
The
But
weather is a huge one. The restored weather is huge. It does not help their agenda at all if there's tons of rain and everyone can grow all the food they need and everyone has all the water they need. So, definitely through orgone energy, we can totally lose our need for that whole system.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you. And I'm quite aware in the last 6 to 12 months the attacks on the food factories and the food plants, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh my goodness. Yeah. Yeah. I think
This is a good time to learn to grow food.
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
it's tragedy, and I know there's more than one video on in your YouTube archive that shows that tragedy can really drive us. That's kind of a big driving factor into affecting a change in our lives. And I'm no different. My great aunt was the oldest victim of the Tree of Life synagogue shooting in Pittsburgh in 2018. That just on a personal level drove me to connecting with the creator again. And as someone who grew up in a basically Jewish in name only, not in fact, just basically an atheist household, there was never any of that. I never had any of that foundation growing up. So upon discovering that, upon just having this incident just thrown in my face, I had to just take a moment, several moments, and just contemplate and figure out where to go with that. And it led me down another part that I'm already down a path that's just so amazing, working with orgonite and orgone energy. That was just another part of it, another part of the journey that was just equally mind-blowing.
Yeah, and I think one of the topics that I was going to bring up in today's conversation, but it's when somebody can step into and align with their greater purpose, all of the other challenges, then I'm not going to say they necessarily melt away, but there's a reason that when you wake up in the morning, that's bigger than the bills. That's bigger than, oh, I got to reach the profits by, third quarter or something along those lines. It's you're excited to wake up in the morning because there's the bigger thing that you get to be a part of. And whether it's orgonite or whatever that thing is, I think that also can become a part of somebody's holistic legacy because, gosh, then it's like your values get invited in. And if your values are
Absolutely.
aligned,
And the bills, the legal documents, the stock portfolio, that's all fictional stuff. We have to, and there's a time and a place for that, but there's also a time and a place for tapping into what's real and what's natural and what's true. And I think that one only has to take a very cursory look at the human species to recognize the fact that we're not really doing the best job of that right now.
well,
But
yeah, it's interesting you bring that up because sometimes I look at the human species and I think, wow, what a traumatized species. And yet some of them do prevail and there's light still in them. And then other people, they just get crippled by the hardships. And I
it's a
think that's
divide. You're seeing the divide. You're seeing the people that there's less and less neutrality. There's people choosing sides. There's for all of the people that are doing what you said and moving in the right direction, there's also just as many people, if not more, that are just degenerating further. So
Well, this is why I urge everybody to understand what EMF is doing, because
thank you for bringing it back.
I do need to just mention that, because that divergence that you're seeing where, some people are generally increasing in knowledge. I mean, people are learning new things, and a lot of lies that people believed in society are now, they're questioning a lot of these things. Things are being questioned.
and
So
revealed.
so people obviously are, reaching for something higher. They're trying to grow, but there's this major suppressing force, and it's going to be very hard for people to accept that something that they really like. I mean, the cell phone is a convenience. It's, you feel connected, you have it all the time, you become attached to it. You actually do become addicted to it. It's going to be very hard for people to let that go and do things a different way, that's why we try to give example after example of how we do it. So you can see you can live a totally normal modern life, and still be connected and not let it degenerate your brain, because we're worried about people's brains not working right. And
it is an addiction.
It's a real problem.
That's not hyperbole in the slightest.
It's a substance in itself, like a substance addiction. EMF is in fact a substance, although it's an energetic substance.
Well, I think where you're pointing the flashlight is when people's awareness can increase, they can be at choice. And so why not be aware of, if they're being led down a path so they can pull back and do their due diligence and become really smart about it and not just say, well, all the other sheep are, everyone else, even though everyone seeks, a sense of belonging, I think is just really smart. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of technology that was developed decades ago. And even though it's like, oh, surprise, it's here today. Oh, no, the history of it was it's been around like with DARPA and other think tanks for many decades. And it only behooves us to be able to become aware of the full truth so we can be at choice.
One of the biggest sources of pressure people are going to feel if they do decide to not use a smartphone anymore and just use the cell phone like we do once in a while, I mean, almost never, they're going to feel the most pressure from friends and family. They're going to be told, and this is that people have told me before, you're impossible to reach. I'm like, well, I actually work from home. So if you called my home phone, the odds are I'd answer it. And if I don't answer it, I'll call you back in a half hour or whatever, or you can email me. I check my computer constantly. I mean, we're not technological. We're very, very connected. It's just that we don't take it with us. If we're out there doing something in the world, we have the ability, meaning the phone is with us, but it's off. If we need it, it's on. If someone is going to have to reach us, we'll turn it on for them. So it can be used but it can be used constructively in that way. But the biggest source of pressure you're going to get is probably friends and family. A lot of older people say their kids are mad at them because they can't text them all the time, stuff like that. But we don't need to text each other all the time, stay in touch, check your email a few times a day, but you could do it on a computer at home, hardwired.
Yeah. So as we draw to a close, was there anyone that inspired you, and or what values do you get to honor? So either or both.
I think the biggest inspiration is Wilhelm Reich, the
Okay.
father of orgonomy, the discoverer of the cosmic orgone energy. And I hope we're honoring his legacy by continuing his work. There are many discoveries that he was beginning to make but didn't finish. In fact, things that he didn't understand that we have now gotten the answers for. So I want to honor Wilhelm Reich and his legacy to bring us this technology. And I'm just very happy to be able to, first off, I'm happy my legacy was given to me. I didn't have to think of it, because I didn't know what my purpose was. I didn't know. And it was bothering me. I was upset by that. And it came to me.
Likewise.
And when we finally realized what our calling was, it made life worth living. It made it beautiful for us. So that's what I hope to leave behind: a cleaner, more beautiful world where people can be healthy and enjoy the abundance of nature.
Inspiration. Well, it's interesting because we actually looked up the word legacy in the dictionary. I told you words were very important.
And I love that you explained what legacy means in your channel. Words are very important. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, that was one of the first videos, and I did it behind. I just want to share. It was like by a pool house in Toronto. It was in the backyard.
Well, it's great. I love the meanings of words.
And it has to do with the will. And that again comes back to reestablishing our connection with the creator, is because we don't really have a will of our own. Like, we have some flexibility as to, what we want to do with our lives and creating our legacy, but we have to stick within a certain framework and do, because we didn't create ourselves. Something created us for a purpose. And if we are fighting the flow, if we're going against that purpose, it's just going to result in pain and suffering for ourselves. I say so many times, it's like about things that are happening in the world, we're doing this to ourselves. There's so many problems that we bring upon ourselves by our refusal to acknowledge reality and go with the flow. And in terms of inspiration, I do look to the creator, and I look to his words, which have shown time and time again to be completely perfect and true. There's not a single contradiction among them. The only contradictions come when people start changing words, which you're not allowed to do, by the way. And that is the biggest source of inspiration to me, because it ties in directly with orgone energy, which again is the life force energy. It's the source of life. And there's nothing more important, I think, to be tapped into than that.
Very, very sweet. And any values that you get to honor? Education, justice?
Well, for me, that the values all also come from the creator. So I'm just honored that I can bring about what I think what this world needs is the energy of creation. It's the energy of love. It's the way of spreading the love, sharing the love to everyone and to all, creatures and plants and everything. So I think that that's very important. I think science is very important, understanding how things work. I think that rather than just taking things, what somebody said, checking it out for yourself. I think one of the main of my values would be that people do their own research and understand the cause of things and know what they're involved in so that they can do the right thing.
Exactly. All of the stuff we're saying about orgonite, don't just take our word for it. Look at the photographic evidence. Look at the blog entries, read the book, and see it for yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, That's something very important that people have to do. And that ties back to responsibility too. Just not just believing what we're told, because that's how lies get spread.
Education is very important value. And I'm glad you mentioned education, but you need to educate yourself. So rather than just take
True
what was
education.
given to you, because the school system is very limited in what they'll teach you, even college. And I went to UCLA, and I was taught some truth and some not truth. And, it just, everybody needs to just check into everything they're learning. What's the source of it? And I think reading is very important too. I'd like to see people get away from YouTube all the time. Not that I don't want them to watch this interview, but I would like to see people read books and educate themselves through someone else's research, something that's real and provable.
Very sweet, very sweet. Well, before I read my closing paragraph, I just wanted to say thank you for speaking into your values and also having the courage to speak about orgonite, because I know it's been a fulfilling path, but it hasn't always been an easy path going forward through the years, but yet you knew it needed to be done. You knew it helped people. So I just applaud your courage, and as well as your values of love, generosity, science, and education.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
well, I'm just going to read out my closing paragraph real quick. Okay, so in closing, I'm Angelina Carleton, the hostess of the Design Your Legacy podcast, as well as the founder of Legacy Planning, a boutique coaching and advisory firm based out of Beverly Hills, California, but international in those I advise. I hope to dive deep into subjects that can help a person define, develop, and execute their legacy, and continue to scour the landscape for those who can be great resources to every dimension of your legacy. For many listeners, there can never be enough education or preparation in the moat or moat around your castle. Whether you find yourself with new wealth or generational wealth, may the content on this channel be an anchor in any storms ahead. We do our best to provide original content for your intellectual and emotional curiosity. So thank you so much for joining us this week. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please remember to rate and review. Or if you're checking us out on YouTube, please remember to subscribe and hit the like button. So thank you so much for joining, and thank you, Sharon and Gabriel, for speaking into your legacies.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much for having us.